today. Revelations continued, chapter 10. So let's just go back up a little bit so that you understand where we are today. John, as he saw this vision, wasn't literally seeing what was happening. He was in the Spirit, and yes, he went to heaven, but what he was seeing was things in the future, because you see, heaven is not held in time like we are. So John was seeing into the future. I need you to understand that. And what he was seeing is he was seeing Jesus opening the seven seals, okay? But John saw it 2,000 years ago, but they have not yet been opened. They are still to be opened. So it was a prophetic thing that John was experiencing. And so the seventh seal, when they got to the number 7, that included 7 trumpets, okay? And so chapter 9, which we dealt with last week, dealt with 6 of those trumpets. And so today we're dealing with chapter 10, and what a welcome break to the woe that has been just as these trumpets are sounding, as the seals were broken, and then eventually as the trumpet sounded. It's just been bad news on bad news, folks. It's been the judgment of God on the earth. But when we get to chapter 10, we still stuck on the 6th trumpet, and the 7th seal, the 7th trumpet has not yet sounded, but the 7th trumpet is coming, but only in chapter 11, verse 15. So today you get a break from all that woe and doom and gloom that I've been preaching, folks. So let's start with Revelations chapter 10, verse 1. And I'll tell you, out of the book of Revelations, this is my favorite chapter. I saw another powerful angel come down from heaven. This one was covered with a cloud, and a rainbow was over his head. His face was like the sun. His legs were like columns of fire. Folks, doesn't that just sound like Jesus? Okay? Covered with a cloud, rainbow, face like the sun, legs like a column of fire, but it's not Jesus, okay? Because it says, I saw another powerful angel, and Jesus is not just another, okay? Jesus is way above the angels. I know in the Old Testament they sometimes refer to him as an angel, but you'll find in the New Testament they don't do that. It's because they didn't have as fuller understanding as what we have in the New Testament about who Jesus is. He was more hidden in the Old Testament, revealed in the New Testament, okay? So it's not Jesus. It is just an angel. And so I would guess, the Bible doesn't say so, but I am allowed to guess that it was probably Michael the archangel, okay? Why do I say that? Because if you read covered with a cloud, rainbow, face like the sun, legs with a column of fire, Michael means who is like God. In other words, Michael looks a lot like God, okay? He's a very, very powerful angel. He is the angel above all the other angels. Revelations 10, verse 2. And with his hand he held a little scroll that had been unrolled. He stood there with his right foot on the sea and his left foot on the land. So he had authority over land and sea. Because how can you stand on the sea? You've got to have authority. Like Jesus walked on the water, this angel had authority over land and sea, and he stood with one foot on the sea and one foot on the land. Revelations 10, verse 3. Then he shouted with a voice that sounded like a growling lion. Thunder roared 7 times. Who of you enjoys a good thunderstorm? Anybody? I know some people hide under their bed when the thunderstorm comes. Is there anybody here that hides under their bed? Come on, don't be shy. You can raise your hand and say, that's me, Pastor. I really enjoy a good thunderstorm, especially when it's close and when you're not expecting it, and the next minute, woof, outside the house, you think, whoa, what was that, man? But folks, this was 7 thunder peals that came through. Now, I don't know if you can speak thunder. I don't speak thunder. To me, it just makes a bang. But this thunder was actually speaking. Revelation 10 verse 4. After the thunder stopped, I was about to write what it had said. So the thunder actually said something. But a voice from heaven shouted, keep it secret. Don't write these things. Don't write it down, John. This is just for you. You know, I hate it when a person starts telling me something and then changes their mind. Oh no, perhaps I shouldn't tell you that. Leave it rather. You know why? I'm probably inquisitive. Okay? Or for those of you that speak Afrikaans or Dutch, nuuskierig. Okay? I would love to know what that secret was. Keep it secret. Why? I would love to know what the thunder said. Why did God keep it secret? I think some of you here this morning are perhaps also nuuskierig like me, eh? Is there any nuuskierig? You see, John could be trusted with God's secrets. I think if God told me, I'd probably tell all of you what it was. Yeah, you see, my wife says I would. I'm not from the FBI or the CIA or whatever. I don't like secrets, man. But God could trust John with the secret. And so he shared some vital information with John about the end times that he didn't want everybody to know. And you know, we've got no cooking clue today because John never told a soul. He just wrote about it, keep it secret. That's all he said. But he knew more stuff about the end times than what we'll ever know. Revelations 10:5. The angel I had seen standing on the sea and the land then held his right hand up towards heaven. He made a promise in the name of God who lives forever and who created heaven, earth, the sea, and every living creature. The angel said, you won't have to wait any longer. Folks, our Christian walk requires a lot of patience. What is patience? The capacity to accept or tolerate delay. You know, we are moving premises this week. Next week we'll be in a much better facility. If it was up to me, we would have moved a long time ago. I've been praying. But there's been a delay, and now the Lord has opened the door. And it's wonderful. But as Christians, one of the things that we have to work on is our patience. We struggle with patience, don't we? If you're honest with yourself. And we don't like delay. Revelations 10, verse 7. God told his secret plans to his servants, the prophets, and it will all happen by the time the 7th angel sounds his trumpet. That's going to happen next week when we deal with the next chapter. The next trumpet is going to sound. This is it, folks. At the sound of the trumpet, the eternal plans of God will begin to fall into place. No more delays, John said, in God's name. God put his seal on it. There will be no more delays. You've been waiting for a miracle sometimes. You've been praying for something and there's been a long delay. But here the word says in Revelation 10, verse 7, there's going to be no more delays. It's over. Then moving on to Revelation 10, verse 8. Once again, the voice from heaven spoke to me. It said, Go and take the open scroll from the hand of the angel standing on the sea and the land. Anybody want to know what was in that scroll? Yes, you do, because you naskirach. That's why. You will never know until one day when you see Jesus. Revelation 10 verse 9, when I went over to ask the angel for the little scroll, the angel said, take the scroll and eat it. Your stomach will turn sour, but the taste in your mouth will be as sweet as honey. Folks, I don't know what was in that scroll. I can only assume it had to do with the purposes of God in the end times. Sweet and sour is not talking about some Chinese dish. I love my Chinese sweet and sour. But this is not that. See, as I've studied the Word over the years, I've loved the Word of God. It's been so sweet in my mouth. I've enjoyed reading the Word. You know, even in the week, the Lord reminded me of a scripture that I'd studied so many years ago, and it came up in my spirit again. I had to go and read it again. I actually played it on my phone for Rona to listen to the book of Haggai. Just loving the Word, and it's so sweet to read about these things. But can I tell you, living out some of the words of God can be really tough. It can be nice to read it, nice to teach it, nice to understand it, but sometimes when you've got to do it, it can be a bit bitter in your stomach. It can be tough. Any of you had to do some tough things for Jesus, make some tough decisions, some things that were not just so easy. Revelation 10:10. I took the little scroll from the hand of the angel and ate it. The taste was as sweet as honey, but my stomach turned sour. I want to tell you, if you want to live for Jesus, you will have many sweet experiences. I've had goosebumps up the back of my neck. I've had my hair, little that I've got, stand on end, guys. Where I've felt the presence of God. I've had times where I've wept in the presence of God. Just such cleansing and such blessing and such wonderful times. But I want to tell you that if you will serve Jesus, you will also go through bitter waters. It's why Jesus led the Israelites out of the promised land, and one of the first places that he took them to after they'd been through the Red Sea was to the place of bitter waters. Why? Because the Lord wanted to get rid of all the parasites that they had in their system from Egypt. He wanted to cleanse them. And that is why the Lord will allow you and I still today to go through bitter waters. Not because he dislikes you, not because he hates you, no. It's because he loves you, that he'll allow you to go through some refining fires. Anybody here been through a refining fire where you've been sweetly serving God and you've been sort of okay, but you maybe not okay for God. You're just okay for yourself. And God says, no, I see that child is serving me now so nicely. I'm going to refine them now a bit. And then he sends some fire, refining fire in your life. And it's bitter in your stomach. It doesn't feel nice, but it's necessary. Can I tell you, the problem with the church today, the modern church today, is it only wants the sweets, okay? Churches all over are struggling. The churches that generally sit jam-packed full are the ones that teach a gospel of just prosperity and no suffering. No seeker-friendly churches. They can have huge attendance. People don't want to hear about refining fire or bitter waters. not for them. They think that's maybe for the olden days. Now, we just want to be blessed coming in and blessed going out. And can I tell you, I am blessed coming in and blessed going out, but I have tasted bitter waters. I have been through refining fires in my life. I haven't enjoyed it for 1 second, but it was necessary. So the modern church just wants the sweetness in the mouth, okay? But when trials come, the rocky ground prevents their roots from having gone down deep, and the weeds that come up choke them out. They have no strength to stand through trials and tribulations. It's a picture of the modern day Christian, the modern day church. People don't want to stand anymore. The first wind of adversity that comes, and oh, Pastor, the church has hurt me, and now I've got corns on my toes, and somebody trod on my toe, and I'm going my own way now. We've seen more than enough of that for a lifetime. I pray for Christians in this church that will have a backbone for Jesus, that when the times get tough, they keep on going. When the bitterness of life crosses their path, they don't turn their back on the Lord Jesus Christ. Because I can guarantee you this in your Christian walk, you will have experiences of refining fire and bitter waters. If you haven't had it yet, it's coming your way. It's on its way. Get ready. But don't let it cause you to lose your way. Let it cause you to find your way. Let it steer you more and more. The more you get knocked in life, the more you press into Jesus. That's what makes a sweet smelling, a sweet savor before the Lord, is a person that's been through difficulties and still pressing into God. Verse 11, then some voices said, keep on telling what will happen to the people of many nations, races, and languages, and also to kings. Folks, now that was a message to John, but it was for the church today, okay? It wasn't just for John. It wasn't like the mystery that God shared with John, that God said to him, don't write that in the book. That's our little secret. This, Revelations chapter 10, verse 11, was not a little secret. It was for John, but it was for every one of us. We're all to keep on telling of the goodness of Jesus. Every one of us must keep on speaking to what's going to happen in the end times, what's going to happen to nations and races and languages, and also to kings and to rulers. We're not to be unaware of what's happening in the end time. We're to be God's voice in the earth, to speak out, that people will understand. You know, there's still such racism in the world today, and there's such wokeness in the world today, and BEE and all these things. It's just racism in reverse to try and rectify things according to man's understanding. But we as the church, we are to tell people that one day, standing before God, every race will be represented there. Black, white, pink, and blue. I don't know what other colors there are. But every race is important to God. That is what we must have in our hearts and in our head. Every language group, every people group, every ruler, doesn't matter, he can think he's as high and mighty as he likes. He will bow his knee before God. Doesn't matter who you are. So this wasn't just for John, it's for you and for me. And I think one of the most exciting things in this short chapter is there will be no more delay. There will be no more delay. Folks, I've experienced a lot of delays in my life. It's part of what caused the bitterness in my stomach. When I read the promises of God, and they were so sweet on my lips. Ooh, it was as sweet as honey. As I said that, I thought of that advert that they made for TV where the guy had to taste this yogurt, and he had to say how sweet it was, but they put all sorts of bitter things in there. Folks, it can be sweet on your lips, but it can become bitter in your stomach. So Revelations is the most wonderful book to preach. You know why? It's exciting. It's so fast moving. You know, there's so much happening on a galactic scale, a grand scale. God's power and purposes unfolding in the earth like we only long to see. We prayed for revival for such a long time. We're still waiting, folks. We're still waiting. I pray that I'm going to see the outpouring of God with these two little eyes of mine. But right now, today, we're still waiting for that. But the book of Revelations is so much stuff is happening on a big scale, man. It's wonderful. But when you meditate on it, it can also become bitter. By chapter 10, and I'm working on today's figures of there's probably close to 8 billion people in the earth. I don't know how many people were born last night while I was sleeping. But so we're going to work on about 8 billion people in the earth. It's just slightly less than that. But by the time we get to chapter 10, already 4 billion people will be gone from this earth. Okay? Folks, that's not so sweet. You know? You think about that for a second. That's a little bit on the bitter side. You know, we can pray, thy kingdom come, thy will be done, and we look forward to God's intervention in the affairs of man. Don't you want God to just come and do what he needs to do in this earth? How often don't we wish that God would rend heaven and come sort out all the problems of this world? Won't that just be wonderful? You see, folks, on the one hand, I want God to come, but on the other hand, think about what will happen when he shows up, because he's a holy God. If you can't see that this book of Revelations has bitterness in it, if it doesn't seem bitter to you, it's because you've never digested it. You've just read it at a glance. You didn't let it get into your stomach and digest it. If you study the book of Revelations and you digest it, you will understand there's a lot of bitterness here. And my advice to you is, don't eat it like children eat their vegetables. Have you ever watched a child eating vegetables they don't want to eat? They move it this side, they move it that side. My wife was very naughty when she was a child. She used to hide some of them under the squashy, I think. She'd find some hiding place for it. Shifting it around on the plate to try and avoid it. And that's what people do with the book of Revelations. They try and skip around it because they say, well, it's difficult to understand. And I want to tell you, eat it. Eat the book of Revelations. And if it doesn't leave a bitter taste, then you have a heart of stone, is the honest truth. Because there's a lot of tragic things happening in this book. So this book is sweet to study, but bitter to digest. Who's going to warn the world of what is to come? The politicians? Do we put our faith and our hope in the politicians? Or the horoscope? You need to avoid this or you need to avoid that. That's what the horoscopes like to tell you, and if you can avoid this and avoid that, then you're going to be very fortunate. No, my friend, it's the church's responsibility. We need to be a voice in the earth. We need to speak up, you and me. You know, most Christians, if I take their Bible, maybe I'll come into the audience now and have a look at somebody's Bible, and just have a look in the book of Revelations. You find Ephesians highlighted under all the good stuff. You go to the book of Revelations, it doesn't want to open, the pages are stuck together because the people have avoided it. How many of you have got those promise boxes at home? Anybody got a promise box? We like to take a promise out and read it. We don't like to read the bitter stuff, the judgments of God. The judgments of God is like vegetables to your soul, man. It's going to make you so healthy. It's going to put a reverential fear of God in you, a respect for God. The world has lost all its respect. I can't believe that they can mock communion at the Olympic Games and think that's okay. If they had mocked Muhammad, you would have had World War III in France by today. It would have been over with them. The place would have burnt down. The Eiffel Tower would have been sent for scrap metal. Okay? But they think it's okay to mock the true and living God. Folks, we are responsible. We have to warn people. Let's just be clear about one thing, that the closer we get to the happenings of Revelations, the more opposition there will be to the book. Revelations, the book of Revelations is not a book of entertainment. It's not easy, comforting material. But I'll tell you this about it, it's the truth. It's the truth of God, of what's coming in the last days. And we are so close to those last days. If I see what's happening in the earth, I mean, you just look what happened in this last week on the political scene. President Biden stood down. Kamala Harris is the new presumptive Democratic candidate. President Trump got shot through the ear. And man, the things that's happening on the world stage, just 2 inches to the left and President Trump could have been dead. And you can have civil war in America, the greatest nation in the earth today. And if you look what's happening in Israel just yesterday, where they bombed children on the field and there's 11, 12, 13 kids dead or whatever. The world, and we've already forgotten about Russia and Ukraine. People dying there all the time. The world is sick, and this world is rushing towards the end of days. There's a time coming when God will say, okay, enough is enough, and he will pour out his judgments. And they will be just and right and fair, because that's who God is. But next week, we're going to hear about 2 witnesses. So even as we move deeper into the catastrophe, God still has a witness. I'm telling you, you would think by then God would be finished with mankind. I mean, he's already taken away like half of the population, 4 billion people, and still they don't want to serve him. And then he still graciously has 2 witnesses. You'll learn about that next week if you're in church. You see, in my life, if I can give you a bit of a personal testimony, I only wanted the sweetness of the gospel. And I think we all want that, you know. We want the sweet things of God. But I'm here today to tell you God wants to bless you. But I wanted to bless myself. I didn't want to have to wait on God's blessing. I wanted to work things out my own way. And it doesn't work like that. Just like you will not give your children authority until they've matured. You know, when your child is still small, there's certain rules, and as they get older, those rules can change and bend a little bit because they're more mature, and you can trust them. And just so, God will not trust you with much until you've proven yourself, until you've faced a fire of affliction, until you've tasted some bitter water and stood firm, and haven't been wishy-washy. Oh, Pastor, this happened to me now I can't serve God anymore. I'm giving up and throwing in the towel. And you will never experience the authority of God in your life. You will never experience the bigger things of God. People are waiting on God for many things, and often it's actually God is waiting on you. Because we're immature. We haven't come to maturity in the faith. When we mature in our faith, then God is ready to pour out His blessing. And I'm expecting great blessings because I've been through many waters of trials and afflictions. And I'm still standing today. I'm telling you, there's blessings for me and there's blessings for you if you will stand. Have you been tested by fire and the motives of your heart been weighed on the scales of heaven? Right, as you're sitting here today in the presence of the Lord is weighing you on His scales. See, God changes your and my heart if you'll go through the process. Will you yield to the Spirit of God this morning? I want to let it be like a call in the spiritual atmosphere. Come deeper. There's a river that flows, and we love to put our toes in the river. It's like some people go to the beach. They don't like to dive into those waves. They just run up and down the beach. As the tide goes out, they go a bit further, and when it comes in, they step back a little bit because they just want the seawater to run over their toes a little bit, then they think they've been to the beach, you know. Because we as humans, we like to be in control of our own lives. And when you are in the sea, if it's up to your ankles, you're fully in control. You're not going to get swept anywhere you don't want to go. You're not going to be rolled around by a wave. It's too shallow. So you're enjoying the sea, but you're not out in the deep. But spiritually speaking, there's a river of God, and the church has been playing with their feet in the water, but God is saying, come deeper. Come deeper. But when you're deeper, then you don't have so much control. When your feet can no longer touch the ground, then you're swimming in faith. And there's a cry in the heart of God this morning for His church to come deeper, to press into Him. He's a holy God. He's an awesome God. And we're beginning to understand from the book of Revelations that He's a God that's not to be messed with. But He is a God that loves you and wants to bless you and wants to take you on a journey that will include bitter waters and fire of affliction. But He'll bring you out on top. He'll take you to the mountaintop, and you will declare His glory, because from whence cometh our help? Our help cometh from God.